Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler, Season 1, Episode 2. Muchen's black eyes shone as he stared at the inside of the stone chamber. As the Lord of the Mu territory, Mu Feng could be considered as one of the strongest individuals within the Northern spiritual realm. The collection that he kept over the years would naturally not be weak. Towards his father, Muchen did not act polite at all. He hurried into the stone chamber and randomly picked up a script. He took a glance at it. Words of light emerged from the script. Common tier middle rank spiritual art, Cloud Flare. Muchen blinked. A spiritual art will normally be divided into Gong Fa spiritual arts, attack spiritual arts, and defense spiritual arts, etc. And these various spiritual arts will be divided into 3 tiers: deity tier, spiritual tier, common tier. Moreover, each of these tiers will be divided into high, middle, low rank. The cloud flare in front of his eyes is a common tier middle rank Gong Fa spiritual art. Muchen fiddled with the script for a while before lowering it down. It was obvious that he was interested in it. He slowly wandered into the depths of the chamber, occasionally picking up a scroll, but immediately putting it down again. Mu Feng followed behind Muchen slowly, allowing him to select any of the spiritual arts here. 100 Sword spiritual art, common tier high rank. Book of Broken Mountains, common tier high rank. The numerous spiritual arts filled Muchen's eyes. Although the majority of them were common tier, Muchen knew that these spiritual arts would attract many individuals if they were brought out. Mu Feng's collection isn't something ordinary within the Northern spiritual realm. After walking around for quite a bit of time, Muchen finally reached the very depths of the stone chamber. However, he has not found the right spiritual art for him. He raised his head and stared at the final stone shelf. 3 open jade boxes were displayed there. You're quite ambitious. Your dad risked his life in order to obtain these 3 spiritual arts. Mu Feng saw the 3 jaded box that Muchen set his gaze upon and could not help but smile. Hearing this, Muchen walked over curiously. He then removed a scroll from one of the jaded box. The script was glistening, and there was a bit of heat coming from it when he touched it. It was clearly not a common tier. Dragon Blaze art! Muchen scanned through the script. His eyes let out a tint of surprise. It's actually a spiritual tier, low-rank spiritual art? He understood the value of a spiritual tier, spiritual art. If it was brought to an auction, it cannot be obtained unless they are willing to spend at least 1 million spirit coins. Yes, I train in this Dragon Blaze art too. It was something I obtained the Dragon Firebird spirit. Mu Feng nodded as he spoke. Muchen fiddled around with his script for a moment, then he took out the 2 other scrolls. One of the scrolls was called Trembling Heaven Tactic, and the other scroll was called Animate Appraisal. Both of them belonged to the spiritual tier low rank. Muchen did not want to let go of those 3 scrolls. He hesitated for a moment as he decided which one he should pick. Have you chosen yet? These 3 spiritual arts are equal to each other. You can train in one of them first and switch if you find a more suitable spiritual art, Mu Feng said with a faint smile. Muchen hesitated for a while. His hand floated on top of the 3 scrolls. In the end, it landed on the Animate Appraisal. Although this spiritual art wasn't specialized in attacking, it had quite an effect on building the foundations. Muchen's hand was suspended on top of the Animate Appraisal. But just when he was about to make his selection, his heart suddenly trembled for a bit. Then his gaze drifted unconsciously towards the shadow of the 3 jaded boxes. He noticed that there was a black script covered with dust. What is this? Muchen was startled for a moment. His hand extended out and grabbed onto the black script. He scrolled through it and only noticed that a few blurred words floated up from the rough surface of the script. The Great Pagoda Art? Muchen stared at the 4 blurry words. His eyes were filled with doubt. Why did it not mention the rank of the spiritual art? Muchen gave a puzzled look towards Mu Feng, but he was surprised. At this moment, Mu Feng had a complex expression as he stared at the black script within his hand. It was an expression filled with yearning. Dad? Muchen asked. He then waved the script in his hand. What is this spiritual art? Why does it not state the rank? It's just an ordinary spiritual art. You should pick another. Mu Feng retracted his gaze and said slowly. Muchen frowned for a bit. His hand played around with the black script. After a short silence, he smiled and said, I want this. Mu Feng's body trembled. He stared at Muchen. he noticed that there was a stubborn expression within that boy's innocent face. "Do you really want to select this?" Mufeng asked after a pause. Mu Chen nodded his head and said, "I don't know why, but I feel that I would regret it if I do not pick this." "Dad, just how did you get this spiritual art?" Mufeng had a complicated gaze as he stared at the script. After a moment, he let out a long sigh and let out a bitter laugh. Then with a voice that was only audible to him, he muttered, "Jing, he really is your son. That script was left behind by your mother. To be accurate, she left it for you. However, she also mentioned that I should let it gather dust if you do not select it." Mufeng gently spoke. "Mom?" Mu Chen could not help but tremble a little bit. He muttered the unfamiliar, yet heart-shaking word. He has never seen his mother before. There was only a vague but gentle figure within the depths of his heart. Ever since he began to understand things, he did not inquire about his mother from Mufeng. Mufeng too did not mention her. It was as if the father and son tried to avoid the topic regarding a person important to them. "Mom should still be alive, right? Where is she?" Mu Chen held the script tightly. He hesitated for a moment before finally asking the thing he wanted to know the most. When he was young, he had carved many wooden sculptures. The wooden sculptures were exactly the same, but there wasn't a clear face on them. This is because the origin of the wood sculpture came from the gentle figure within his heart. Every single one of the wooden sculpture had traces of hope and longing. The matter regarding your mother is extremely complicated. It does not help if I tell you now. However, if you want to know about it, then you should train in this. Once you reach a certain level in it, you will naturally know. Mufeng was silent for a long time, and he finally clenched his hands as he stared at Mu Chen. "Did Mom leave because of me?" Mu Chen suddenly asked. "You were the person that she was most worried about. Because of you, she was willing to throw away everything." Mufeng did not give a direct answer. He only rubbed Mu Chen's head and said with a self-deprecating voice, "It's all because your father did not have the ability. I was not able to let your mother stay together with you. I had tried before, but I still failed. I'm sorry." Mu Chen nodded. A brilliant smile appeared on his innocent face. "Dad, do you want to see Mom again?" "I want to. I really want to. I really want our family to finally reunite." Mufeng lifted his head and murmured. A sense of longing also existed within it. Mu Chen gripped his hands tightly. The rough black script emitted a warm temperature. Shortly after, he lifted his head and gave a slight smile towards Mufeng. "I'll select this. Don't worry, Dad, I will help you complete what you have failed at. If you believe in me, then I will let our family reunite with each other one day. Nobody will be able to stop it." Mufeng stared at the boy with an innocent face but firm eyes. A rippling surge of bitterness appeared within his chest, causing his eyes to become red. He then nodded his head. "Jing, our son will not be someone ordinary." The sun shined into the courtyard with lush branches. It formed a beam of light. Within the beam, many tiny lights danced along with it. It made the whole courtyard seem very transparent. Mu Chen sat cross-legged on a stone chair. One of his hands was on his face. The other was fiddling with the black script. In the end, he selected the Great Pagoda Art. It was also a commitment that he made to his own father. However, even Mufeng did not know what rank this Great Pagoda Art was. He could only vaguely tell that this thing was extremely powerful. As to why he said it was very powerful, the reason he gave was that it was because your mother was very, very powerful. Mother was very, very powerful? Mu Chen blinked his eyes. Mufeng was able to lift up the entire family and create this Mu territory within the Northern Spiritual Realm. He became a famous powerhouse within the Northern Spiritual Realm. In fact, he could be considered as quite amazing. But if even he said that she was powerful, just how powerful was Mother? If Mother was that powerful, why did she fancy Dad? Mu Chen grinned. It looks like Dad had a wonderful encounter with Mom when he was young. It should be a good story. Mu Chen organized his chaotic feelings for a while. Then he gazed at the black script within his hand. He would have to fight Liu Yang 10 days later. That guy is also a person at the spiritual movement stage initial phase and possesses the human level spiritual pulse. Although he had met monsters with a much more powerful spiritual pulse at the spiritual road, but the spiritual road was somewhat peculiar. The so-called spiritual road is, in fact, a very enormous stage for a trial. The creators of the spiritual road are the 5 great academies. Every 3 years, the spiritual road will activate. The entry selection for the spiritual road was also quite strange. It was not selected through human means, but it was searched out by a divine artifact known as the Mirror of Judgment. This search was quite strange, but the people that were selected by this divine artifact were mostly people with excellent talents. In general, they would be able to enter and train at the 5 great academies once they successfully pass the Spiritual Road's trial. The Spiritual Road is formed in a world. In this strange world, nobody is able to use any energy. In other words, whether it is spiritual aura or Do Qi and Yuan Li from lower planes, nobody can use them within the Spiritual Road. The selected person would face many life and death experiences when they enter the Spiritual Road. Under the circumstance that they could not use spiritual energy, they could only use their own physical body and their own dexterity and wisdom to resolve a variety of dangers. This method of forcing them to a corner is the best way of tempering their willpower. When entering the Spiritual Road, the selected person would be told that if they want more power, then they must have an unshakable resolve. Only by controlling this resolve will they be able to become someone truly strong. In the 10 million years, 70–80% of the strongest powerhouses that came out of the 5 great academies had participated in the Spiritual Road's trial. Thus, you can see how important the Spiritual Road's trial is. This is also why many geniuses would go after it like ducks. The 5 great academies. Moins clenched his fist tightly. He must enter that place. Not only did he promise her, but he would only obtain the qualifications to stand in the outside world if he comes out from the 5 great academies. Towards the outside world, Moins was not aware of it that much. However, he would occasionally hear about it from Mufeng. The Great Thousand Worlds he currently resides in is a vast, endless place. Many clans live here. The northern spiritual realm is just like a tiny speck of sand within an ocean. It is an insignificant place. Moreover, the Great Thousand Worlds interweaves with numerous worlds. However, those worlds could only be called lower planes. This is because this world seemed to be at a higher level than those worlds. The Great Thousand Worlds is the center of numerous planes. However, the ones that were able to come from a lower plane to the Great Thousand Worlds all possess amazing talent. They must be the strongest individuals in their world. Otherwise, they would not be able to break through the shackles of the world. Moins had once overheard a conversation about the overpowered people that came from the lower planes in a higher-up meeting at the Northern Spiritual Academy. There were 2 that were the most well-known. Moins did not hear their names, but he could hear their titles. Flame Emperor, Martial Ancestor. They were both domineering titles. They came from the lower planes, but according to Moins speculation, they were probably considered as a true sovereign within the Great Thousand World. That Martial Ancestor had once caused an enormous ruckus in the Great Thousand World. It was said that he charged into a rather powerful clan, the Ice Spirit Clan, within the Great Thousand World by himself. The Ice Spirit Clan could not stop the man who was holding a lightning staff. That one battle trembled the heavens. When that was known, the entire Great Thousand World was shocked, and it was rumored that he had done all of this in order to save the person he loved. In contrast, the unworldly Flame Emperor kept a low profile. However, it was rumored that he had gone to the Fire Spirit Clan, and the Fire Spirit Clan even asked an old ancestor who had lived for numerous years to come out. Yet he was not able to get the upper hand against the Flame Emperor and had to let the Flame Emperor leave. This stunned everyone from the Fire Spirit Clan. The powerhouses that came from the lower planes would still be as amazing as before and were overbearing even after they came to the Great Thousand Worlds. The outside world was really filled with excitement, making one extremely thrilled. However, Moins also understood that he has not reached that level yet. However, he truly believed that he would be able to reach it if he had enough time. Moins stared at the black script in front of his hand. A smile emerged on his innocent face. Then everything should begin from this. Moins placed his hands together and slowly closed his eyes. The black script within his palm let out a warm glow. His eyes were filled with darkness. Moins moved using his mind and urged the spiritual aura within his body to flow through the meridians in his arm and eventually into the script within his hand. Bzzzt. Soon after the spiritual aura was inserted inside, the script let out a subtle buzzing sound. Then the darkness began to be torn up, and something seemed to enter Moins' body through his palms. Use your body as a pagoda to witness the road of a spirit. The mysterious and obscure chant seemed like an ancient bell sound. It quietly echoed in Moins' mind. Then he quickly protected his mind and firmly memorized these chants. The ringing sound gradually dispersed. The training chant contained way too many things. Many of them were things that Chen had not touched before. Thus, he wisely decided to put it aside for now and accept the parts that he could understand. However, the chant was so obscure that his brain was still in pain. He had never seen such a mysterious and complex chant. It was obvious that Chen had extraordinary talents. Otherwise, he would not have qualified for the spiritual road. Within the mysterious chant, he understood the secret within it. Shortly after, he finally began to move the spiritual aura. Based on the chant, the root circulation within the meridians were all quite strange. If you were able to trace the lines, you would be able to discover that the path that it travels seemed like a strange tower shape formed within his body. The spiritual aura followed this weird meridian's route and began to circulate. The first circulation obviously uses up an enormous amount of energy. However, Chen was able to fight back the tiredness and tried to maintain and complete the spiritual aura circulation. The strange meridian route was extremely difficult to circulate. Even if Chen tries to desperately control, he would still fail repeatedly. However, he did not feel rash about it and maintained a calm state as he circulated it over and over again. This process lasted an entire afternoon. After repeated failures, a tiny portion of the spiritual aura finally passed through the final meridian under Chen's careful control. When the spiritual aura passed through the final meridian, the originally transparent spiritual aura began to change. The color gradually became a dark and deep color. Only now can the spiritual aura be truly called spiritual aura. And although this dark spiritual aura seemed quiet and reserved, Chen could vaguely feel that underneath this quietness is a hidden, overbearing, and fierce feeling. It was evident that the quality of the spiritual aura that came out through the great pagoda art was extremely high. It was not something that an ordinary spiritual art could compare with. The thing that Mother left behind was truly amazing. Chen secretly thought to himself in excitement while he was completely sweaty. This dark spiritual aura quietly occupied Chen's auracea. As long as he insisted on training this spiritual aura, it would definitely become massive. And in the moment that the dark spiritual energy occupied his auracea, Chen's body violence shook. A sudden burst of dizziness appeared within his mind. He could feel that something was resonating with it inside his body. It was a wonderful feeling. It started from within Chen's heart, but it soon vanished. What was that all about? Chen recovered quickly. He was quite alarmed and quickly began to probe around within his body. However, he did not find anything wrong with it. It was as if the early feeling was just an illusion. However, Chen firmly believed that it wasn't an illusion. Was it because of the great pagoda art? Chen thought quickly. Then he looked at the dark spiritual energy within his auracea. He pondered about it for a moment, but he did not find any clues related to it. Thus, he could only give up. The great pagoda art was left behind personally by his mother. Although he had never seen her before, he believed one truth. His mother would not leave behind anything dangerous to him. Or is it because of this? Chen suddenly moved his mind. He could only see that there was a black glow floating on top of the dark spiritual energy within his auracea. The black glow flashed, and then it returned back to its original appearance. It was actually a piece of black paper. On top of the black paper, there wasn't any writing, but you could vaguely see some extremely fuzzy lines. The black paper quietly floated within his auracea and let that dark spiritual energy warm it up. Within that simple and unadorned paper, a mystery that could not be described was revealed. Chen stared at the piece of mysterious black paper. He was quite confused. That item was something that he obtained during the spiritual road. However, he did not see any effects from it ever since then. He was able to faintly tell that the mysterious black paper wasn't something ordinary. It was just that he didn't have the strength to unlock its secrets now. Was the previous resonance because of it? Chen thought for a moment, but he shook his head. Although the black paper was mysterious, it was obvious that it did not cause the earlier commotion. He pondered seriously about it, but to no avail. Chen could only finally give up and put aside this issue. He stared at the dark spiritual energy within his auracea again. Based on the chant, the great pagoda art was divided into 3 levels. First being foundation, second being shape condensation, and third being tower form. However, he had not even reached the foundation level yet. He could only be regarded as just entering the initial phase. If he wanted to advance to the foundation level, it would require quite a bit of effort. Inside the courtyard, Mu Chen slowly opened his closed eyes. He looked at the sweat on his body and could not help but shake his head. The great pagoda art was definitely difficult to train in. It was already this difficult considering that it was just at the starting line. He really did not know when he would be able to train it into the tower form level and just how difficult it would be. I wonder by how many levels will this great pagoda art amplify my spiritual energy? Mu Chen's heart trembled for a bit. He was curious about it. A spiritual art had another important role. That is to amplify the spiritual energy. In general, a common tier high-rank Gong Fa spiritual art would be able to amplify the spiritual energy by 5 levels. A spiritual tier low-rank Gong Fa would be able to amplify the spiritual energy by 10 levels. The more levels it could amplify, the stronger the spiritual energy would be when it was released. You could also use this method to roughly distinguish just what rank the spiritual art is. Thinking up to this point, the curiosity within Mu Chen's eyes began to increase. He spun his hand around, and a dark spiritual aura emerged from his palm. Then he slowly gripped his palm, and his eyes began to boil up. He was going to test just how powerful this great pagoda art is. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.